Mr. Brown, we are live.
Hello there. Hello.
Hello.
We should ramp up the people.
Yes.
Get people in here.
Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your cat, tell your pet hippopotamus.
Wow, can you imagine having a pet hippo?
Be pretty sick, honestly.
I think that's not allowed.
Well,
Aren't hippos protected?
Yeah, probably. But
they're pretty dangerous animals too.
They're
if
what,
you know
Griff?
a guy though.
What, you got a hippo guy?
I'm saying they're pretty dangerous animals.
They are. They'd probably kill you, right?
Yeah, they're like the most deadly animal on Earth in terms of killing humans per interaction or something like that.
That sounds pretty dangerous.
You wouldn't want to befriend a hippo.
Have you guys in the chat?
And I haven't had dinner.
Have you guys in the chat done anything dangerous?
Yeah. Well,
I did something dangerous today. I ordered Subway.
Oh,
I ordered some Subway today.
Be careful, they're spicy.
Yeah. I said no to the banana peppers. That was too dangerous for me. Yeah. We only have 4 people in here right now. Please tell your friends. Please get people in here.
Yep.
We don't want to be alone. We don't want to speak into the ether. We want to actually talk to you. Let's all cope together, folks.
Yep. Opium.
All right.
Black Panther 2 was really good.
It was very good. It was very good. By the way, it's 3-3 in the battle between John Wolford and Colt McCoy now.
Who do we want to win? We want
the Cardinals.
I think the Cardinals,
Yeah, Cards are dead.
Yeah, they're cooked. Also, Jeff Saturday and the Colts are up 10-0 on the Raiders right now.
It's pretty funny.
And by the way, Matt Ryan is the quarterback again. So
put Matt in.
Yep.
All right.
Was this week 10 of the NFL?
Yeah, week 10.
This is week 10. Yep. Matty is clearly tired.
Matty has had a big weekend.
It's been a very big week for Matty. Our boy has grown into a man this week.
Yeah.
I'm just promoting the podcast, guys.
Put some hair on his chest. Talking to players, fraternizing with management.
Who is the best wide receiver in the league, and why is it Justin Jefferson?
No, I've already done a video on that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Check it out. Underdog Fantasy on YouTube. There you go.
Okay, let's do the intro.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload live reaction to the Seahawks Week 10 loss, unfortunately, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 21-16. Seattle couldn't make it 5 in a row, and this was a game where really, they did some good things, but it was a very incomplete game. The first half was especially hard for them to overcome, and really, I kind of am left with the impression that they got outcoached. Before we dive deep into that, Griff, would you agree with the overall assessment?
Yeah, it definitely felt like a game where if you're trying to make one like defining statement, I would put most of it on the coaching and the game plan. They were outworked in that regard.
Ty.
Yeah, I felt like they got outcoached as well. And yet, despite all of that, it felt like they were really 1 or 2 plays away from potentially winning this game. So it's another one of those games for the Seahawks where it's like all these things went wrong for them, but they were still that close to actually coming out with a win. So it's disappointing, but you get the bye week coming up, and you get to reset for back to neutral here and go back to the drawing board.
The drawing board?
The drawing board.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so a big thing that I wanted to highlight in terms of that kind of outcoached theme was Brian Monet was inactive, and that, raises some eyebrows because I think of the Buccaneers as always wanting to get a power run game going, always wanting to get gap runs going, and doing it from heavier kind of personnel looks too, and, I formation kind of appearances. We don't know why Monet was inactive, because I wasn't at Pete Carroll's press conference. I was in the locker room where I was talking to Miles Adams, and he admitted he was a bit rusty at nose tackle, which is where he spent most of his time. Now, obviously, they have Al Woods, but they got run on. They got absolutely run on. And this was the Buccaneers' season high rushing total. They rushed 44 times for 161 yards with 3.7 yards a carry, which that's not the best yards per carry, but if you times 3.7 times by 3, you're getting a first down. So
Right.
Is enough. And then they had big plays on top of that. And obviously, there's no statistical proof yet that the run game frequency or efficiency actually benefits play action. However,
Are
the
we
Buccaneers,
discoursing 6 minutes into this?
we're not discoursing on that. However,
Matthew,
I don't want to discourse. However, the
behave.
Buccaneers set up everything
Matthew,
off
you're being toxic
play
right now.
action. They set everything up off the run. There was then play action stuff, which
Yeah.
was just killed Seattle. And there was moments where Seattle's defense seemed to have it together, but really, that absence of Monet Griff feels big to me.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel big, and at the same time, though, and well, it feels big, but at the same time, I don't think that they were the run game issues were really like the interior guys getting moved so much. There were definitely moments, but I think that when they were, and again, this is just broadcast observations, but when they were in bear, when they were in odd space stuff, I felt like the interior was sound. It was when the ball got spilled out to the perimeter, or the scheme went out to the perimeter, where they were having issues, and we'll get that in a second. But not having Mona meant that you didn't have particularly negative plays, kind of like maybe Mona or Adams at his best was like a stalemate. But part of the reason why their run defense has been so good is that they're just dominating. The alternative to dominating doesn't mean being dominated. It can mean just doing like barely holding up, and either way they were still lacking the dominance in the interior. But that said, they were running a lot of those gap runs, power and counter, out to the C gap bubble. And I feel like this is a game where, and especially we'll know once we get into the tape, but this is a game where not having built-in front adjustments or complementary calls when you are in bear to manage the C and D gap, it finally came back to bite them. Because like we talked about last week, they're presenting weak spots, and they're not doing, which every front has a weak spot, and teams are running all the calls you should be running at it, and they're handling it just fine. And this game, it felt like finally that dam broke, and like a lot of those runs would get strung out, and it looked like things were kind of neutral for either side, and then all of a sudden the ball would just hit, and then Fournette or their other guy would just kind of glide up for 6-7 yards a few times, and a couple of times even more. So I feel like that finally just kind of bit him in the butt a little bit. But what did you guys see on that front?
Well, so the Bucs ended up averaging 3.7 yards per rush attempt in this game, which is fine. That's like bottom 3, bottom 4 level production. So you can live with that overall. But that, when you really look at the big picture here, the first half running numbers were, I mean, they were most importantly here, they were getting into short yardage situations, and that's why they were ultimately 10 for 15 on third down, because they could just do whatever they wanted in those situations. And so, and I think, again, a big part of that is, they, as simple and cliched as this is, they just kind of straight up lost the battle in the trenches in this game. And that's on both sides of the coin. And so they were getting their ass beat in the first half. And it just set the tone for the rest of that, for how the rest of that half went. And that just set the Seahawks back too far for them to climb back from.
Yeah, that whole thing that we've always seen, but Tom Brady took what was there. And when Seattle came out in their 2-4-5 or even front, and I feel they wanted to run that a bit more against the Buccaneers, because I don't think they expected. Well, Carroll has said afterwards that they didn't expect Tampa Bay to pass in certain formations. They didn't expect play action from certain formations, and other Seahawks players like Nwosu, Miles Adams brought it up to me first. They mentioned how Tampa Bay in the locker room, how Tampa Bay switched up their tendencies.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to me. I mean, yeah, the NFL is all about finding the edge and you have to acknowledge tendencies. But on a kind of weird short week, it's kind of crazy to me that Seattle spent, that much of a effort on tendencies that it impacted them in this manner. Now, going Tampa Bay going 10 for 15 on third down, that is Brady taking what's there. Seattle still struggling in their 45-2-4-5. Adams told me that, again, it's a similar thing of you have less help than the bare front. You're more having to take the doubles for the linebackers behind. You're not one-on-one. And he prefers playing forward in the bear stuff, which, I mean, I think every defensive lineman on the Seahawks seems to be in that kind of position. And then also, Seattle had some coverage bust, which Griff, I think, had sort of been coming. Or had already come, but Brady took advantage.
Yeah. So yeah. So like on the tendency note, I think there is kind of like maybe a deeper lesson where, because they are one of the pass heaviest teams in the league. But so to then, run more than you're expecting, that's if you think about that, you're trying to prepare and match what a team does, that leaning all the way into a tendency breaking game plan, if you're an offense, can work really well for you. But then also on the flip side of that, when they are in their run formations where they could run or play action, their run rate within that is also extremely high. So there's some there's some dichotomy there. And from a tendency perspective, they just kind of messed around with it. So yeah, they're using Seattle's information against them, and maybe it's something that can only work, one or two times. I felt like a lot of the play action stuff over the middle, I think you kind of live with the results, at least the stuff that was meant to attack the second level and not like truly like the third level, not necessarily past the third level, but kind of in like the deep intermediate area. Like they could have played that better. The stuff that happened at the second level, yeah, they connected on some things, but it's Tom Brady and he's just going to rifle those in there. It's not as though they weren't ready for it. Granted, Barton had, I don't know if that was play action, but Barton had an interception. Brooks almost had one. A lot of those throws were tightly contested. The corners were squeezing the digs and they just couldn't quite defend every one. I feel like that's just kind of the nature of playing Tom Brady and Godwin and Julio Jones and Mike Evans. And you kind of just have to live with it a little bit. It was a lot of the stuff where they were busting, like you were alluding to, they had stacked formations and then they would throw the running back to the flat quickly, called a fast three, right? And that triggers a different rule depending on the coverage you're in. And they were praying, both with an E and an A, praying that on and for the defense to play it a certain way and get caught in something. And sure enough, like that one seam route, it went over both the linebackers' outstretched arms. But the distribution forced Seattle to zone off and forced them out of their match rules. And maybe, plainly speaking, maybe some guy was supposed to do something that they didn't. Maybe Neal, because they had a go wheel combination out of a stack. Maybe Neal was supposed to carry, and the wheel is supposed to prevent him from zoning to the flat with a fast three.
Tight ends, right?
You're right. It was either condensed tight ends or a wing, but kind of similar rules, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And ultimately, it's just good design. But it's Leftwich, when we talk about Seattle being out game planned, out coached, out schemed, they put on tape last week the Cardinals doing similar things and trying to manipulate Seattle's Rip Liz rules, and Seattle to those stacks. And because the problem is, well, who's the number one, who's the number two? Seattle solved, and you have the fast three in the flat. You want to be able to defend the check down. Seattle solved that by zoning off, having the overhang Neal in this case zone off, or is Josh Jones, but he would zone off, meaning he doesn't care anybody. You just kind of play spot drop rules, and the patterns at the second level that Cliff threw out didn't break them. Like they played it right. This game, they're like, okay, they're going to zone off if we give them these looks, but we just need to make sure the route patterns then break the spot drop principles, and they did. And like that one up the seam, I don't even know, is provided everybody played their like rule
Yeah,
right.
it's a
I don't
good beater. It's just a
right.
good completion. Diggs makes a big hit on it, a legal hit in the post. He just can't physically plant his foot and play the ball because it's accurate, and it's just the hole in the coverage if
Right.
you're spot dropping.
And Woolen can't midpoint because his route is outbreaking. So if it was normal split, he would feel more confident because that route can only go vertical or kind of hitch up.
I
Right.
wondered if Neil was meant to not Neil. I wonder if Neil pushed and then Cody was meant to cover it a bit more match like. But
That's the only thing I can think is that you rarely ever have the near hook man turn with something up the seam. And we only see that from them when they're pushing to the sail. And when they have drop 7, cover 3, they are just not doing that anymore. It's all on the overhang to sail with it. And granted, this wasn't a sail. This was a wheel vertical. It was right up the numbers. So I feel like this is then on the coaching staff to institute, the pattern match rules to figure this out, because they're going to see more of it.
But it's been an issue all season. Like I don't understand. I just don't understand. But
yeah, I mean, it was a
and then
nasty play.
It was, yeah. And that's why the run matters, and their ability to hard play action fade. Like the pass rush was nullified by that. And anyway, but how did you before we kick it over to Ty, Griff? How did you view the Julio Jones underneath touchdown? Because that I believe the broadcast said was on Kobe Bryant, but that seems like a crazy play to ask Bryant to get onto a shallow crossing route. If anything, Brooks should do that, but then we don't. Diggs doesn't really play like the backside quarter play. He pushes over to the 2, but then it was an odd play.
It was an odd play, and assuming that
And a good
Kobe
beater.
and a good beater too. Assuming Kobe did what he was supposed to do, it's really interesting because they haven't done that yet, where it's quarters across the board, right? And then you've got Bryant as the strong apex, whatever, not apex, overhang, and he's carrying a route with outside leverage, and they're in a split field coverage. So that right away, that gives you like TCU special, or like, cover 7 stump stubby vibes, right?
And Jackson's playing like man like on his guy outside of Bryant, inside alignment.
So it gets very interesting. And I think they're in dime. So Neal was the weak flat defender, and it was 3rd and 10. So it would make sense that it was a specialized trips check quarters call. If you get a weak shallow route from that weak number 1 receiver, especially when the alignment is reduced, you're thinking, okay, that's like a shallow indicator, as you're saying. You have to have something game planned for it. So if Neal is expanding to the flat, because he is the flat defender, then that means that only and if Kobe has an assigned match, he can't possibly read what's going on the weak side of the field. There's no way. So that means then it's either on Brooks to nail down on that shallow and abandon playing the hook from the number 3 and trust the combination of the weak safety or the weak corner with it, which would be Woolen, or Woolen needs to take that through and Brooks remains the hook defender in the high hole. So it's one of the two. And I suspect it's probably on Brooks to come down.
I mean, because Diggs wouldn't push that far over, like if he thought Woolen wasn't going to be playing 3 up.
Right.
But as soon as one went shallow, Diggs really started flying out. The weak one went shallow. Diggs flew out really far outside because he expected Woolen to get up and replace him, basically. And that's what happened. No one covered the under route. And when I asked Diggs and Neal about the busts, they just put it down to execution. So it wasn't a miscommunication thing. It was just blown assignments,
Right. And I wonder with Brooks, he does run after it. Was that just him rallying to the ball like everybody does? But trying to think what they're saying, It could be, well, Brooks didn't bust his assignment in that he didn't realize what he needed to do. It just took him too long to get there. But
Yeah,
he
which
would have.
again is a tough concept to defend, and it's kind of an odd coverage for Seattle to run. They're clearly worried about maybe like dagger at the sticks or something, but Brady loves throwing a little yacky kind of drag. You know, that's like his
Right.
maybe bread and butter. But anyway,
Right. I would have. I mean, I just feel like you didn't need anything but like cover 2 to both sides, honestly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway,
Cover 2 match, not spot
yeah.
drop. But anyway,
which I don't recall seeing a single snap of, but obviously I need to watch the tape back. Now, Ty, what was weird from a Buccaneers perspective to wrap up on the defense was that Tariq Woolen interception, which at the time I felt was very unusual, but I've since seen a broadcast where like a few plays prior, Brady was wide open and Woolen left him alone.
Yeah, I think that was just a matter of like we want to put a dagger in these guys. And also a little bit of like we're playing in Germany. Let's put on a little bit of show here and try to catch them off guard. Fournette just shouldn't throw that ball, right?
Yeah, game
like,
state wise as well, it didn't make sense. Like
yeah, like I get the idea of it, but Fournette's just got to fall on that. Throw it.
He was getting way too excited. He was like, I gotta throw it.
Yeah, I have to throw. That's the crazy thing about those situations too. It's like every time that a running back or receiver gets the ball in that situation, it's just like, I have to throw this. I have to throw this. No, you don't. You don't. Just fall on it. Or if like no one's upfield, just throw it out of bounds. So that was horrible. And that felt like that was going to be the thing that got the Seahawks back in this game, because up to that point that was all Bucks, and they put together a great drive to get down into the red zone, and then the fumble happens on the QB draw for Gino.
I don't even think that was a cool draw. Like
he said in his presser that it was.
Yeah, but Pete said it wasn't. Like
there you go.
Was the O line did not get downfield. They all passed set, and there was no attempt to block. It was very weird. Again, that was a bit cute from Seattle. Like, what was it, 2nd and goal, and you go into empty? Yeah. I know it works. You can nitpick individual plays anyway, but that was super frustrating. And Seattle just made too many mistakes in this game on both sides of the ball to win. Really, like the final thing to say about the defense is that Brady touchdown, the third one. Yeah. I was like, they're blocking. The ball hasn't come out. That's offensive pass interference. And lo and behold, it was the far side from me. Lo and behold, the official throws a flag, and I'm like, okay. And then they throw a touchdown the other side. And I'm like, well, that doesn't matter because it's offensive pass interference. That'll be, what would that have been? I think 2nd and goal plus 10 extra yards, maybe 3rd and goal. And then they wave it off. And Pete Carroll was not happy with their explanation either. He said because it's away from the play, it's like a philosophical thing. What does that mean? Like, that was a joke. That was a joke. And, a 5-point game, Seattle, that's a big swing for that to happen, especially when they call it on the field. Obviously, you can't add on pass interference when you review a touchdown, but like you call it on the field and you decide to wave it off based on what? Like that did not make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Now we're done with the defense, right? I guess.
By the way, thank God Jordan Brooks was just a cramp.
Yes. Yeah. We should. Yeah. Good point.
Oh, my heart sank when I saw him limping off of the field, because that's the one thing that you cannot afford to have happen.
Yeah. So let's talk about the field. I know both sides of the ball, offense and defense. Even Pete Carroll felt that it did impact their play. Obviously, both teams are playing on the same surface, but like, for instance, DJ Dallas was upset and thought the run game would have done way better if the field wasn't so slippy. And Pete Carroll thought the run defense would have been better, even though they're all playing on the same surface. The thing with this is like that surface it needs like a longer stud that I don't think exists really in American football cleats. Like I've worn American football cleats, and soccer cleats and on each surface, because Britain has lots of weird playing surfaces, and you would be like slipping and sliding with American football cleats on a soccer field because you need something to dig into the turf a bit more.
Right.
They just don't make, like, honestly, if a team goes to Germany again, they should just wear soccer cleats for that game. Heck, Michael Dixon already, not Michael Dixon, well, he might, but Jason Myers does anyway because he's a kicker. But everyone should, because they couldn't. And where that really showed up was special teams. A lot of the pursuit was like just hairy stuff. I actually felt Seattle got
opening kickoff, there was Darden slipped and one of the Seahawks kick coverage guys.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Well, I just actually felt like every special teams play Seattle was pinned in by the Buccaneers coverage units, and they kind of got their ass kicked on special teams.
I saw someone a couple of years ago. Someone was either tweeting about it. Someone who had a lot of knowledge about fields around the league and stuff, and they said that Seattle does tend to slip a lot more than most teams because they refuse to wear longer cleats, even as American football cleats go, because they're trying to prevent as many ligament tears as possible. But then that leads to more slipping. And I feel like maybe this is
what you can also tear your ligaments from slipping.
True. But just like non-contact ACLs and all that stuff, they don't have as many of those. And I think like statistically, they don't have as many knee tears as other teams, but they do have a lot of, obviously for other reasons maybe, but soft tissue injuries seem to be at a league high rate.
So what you're saying is that Chris and Michael needed a longer stud.
C-Mike did nothing wrong.
He
was sabotaged.
Yeah.
So when Brooks went off the field, the replay looked so bad because it like jarred his knee and it was slippy out there, and the edge of the field was really like patchy, like even thinner and not good. And I was like, oh no, this looks bad. But then he came back in and it was just cramps. So that's great news. And Seattle came out of this game with good health. There was no major injuries. So again, there's positives to take. Now, the time of possession finished. The Buccaneers 36 minutes 55 seconds with the ball. The Seahawks 23 minutes 5 seconds with the ball. Now, part of that is the defensive struggles. The Buccaneers going 10 for 15. Seattle couldn't stop them when they needed to at the end either, which was kind of that fit the kind of whole game really.
Yeah.
But also Seattle's offense was really struggling, particularly running the football. So they went 1 for 9 on third down. They went for 2 for 2 on fourth down, but you don't really want to have to go for it on fourth down, right? They had 14 rushing plays. I had to check. I was reading that right, for 39 yards, a 2.8 average. Now, yes, Dallas mentioned that the field may have been partially to blame, but also, I don't know. We need to watch the tape, but the run game was not doing anything.
Once again, they got their ass kicked up the middle. They couldn't do anything on the interior at all. I mean, and it seemed like partly they were trying to run away from Vita Vea, which good plan, but it wasn't working for them. Also, again, got to watch the tape. I don't know which holes were actually there, which ones weren't. But this felt like another game in which Ken Walker was just way too hesitant in certain situations. There was a 3rd and 1 where he was trying to kind of be patient behind the line, try to bounce it out, and then got wrapped up for a 1-yard loss. Like, I don't know. It feels like in those scenarios, and again, don't know what the actual situation looks like there, but to me, just kind of going off of the information that I have, that just feels like a situation where you got to get it and go. And it just doesn't feel like he's really doing that, especially early on in games. It just kind of feels like he's trying to, and of course, this is also stuff that showed up on his college tape as well, where he was constantly bouncing stuff to the outside and wanting to work out to the boundary and everything. So, but yeah, so they couldn't get anything going there, and that was putting them in a lot of 3rd and longs. And so, complete opposite of what, the Bucs situation was in this game. The Seahawks end up going 1 for 9 on 3rd down because mostly they were put in these really bad spots, plus on, what was it? The 2nd drive of the game, they had a 3rd and short-ish, I believe, and then Damian Lewis had the 15-yard penalty. Just can't have that, And so it was just those things just continued to happen. This offense continued to shoot itself in the foot, particularly in the first half. Second half, I thought was a bit better. We'll get into that. But yeah, what was your thoughts on that, Griff?
Yeah, I agree with you on Walker in the run game. It was blocking not being fantastic, and then Walker not helping himself in some situations. I thought Walker had a much better game as a receiver, which is cool development.
Yeah.
But yeah, he Chris Carson, like, just to contrast, like, skill sets and abilities and everything, Chris Carson was particularly good at squeezing out all the yards there was on the backside of those gun inside zone runs. Part of it is that they don't do a lot of gun inside zone now, so he might be a little rusty after doing a lot of that in college. Walker might be. But yeah,
that was like their change up, wasn't it, this week?
Yeah,
Gun
it was
inside zone.
Yeah. And then, like, they clearly were game planning some specific types of runs against their fronts early on, and they were sound, like, reasoning. You could see the intention, but it was some player on the Bucks just outplaying in enough spots, and the blocks just couldn't get up. So this offensive line's ability to move people just really is not, like, stellar. They can definitely have moments. Each individual player is capable of having a wow block, but just collectively, they're not overwhelming. They're kind of a little bit more on the finesse side of things. And the Bucks are both a rugged and finesse defensive line. They can do it all when it comes to run defense. Like, they'll beat you with technique or sheer force.
Yeah.
So it's just they didn't have it there in the run game.
Pete had a pretty astonishing comment about basically how they had to put it on the back of Gino because they just couldn't run the ball. Like,
Yeah.
I need to find it. But Gino ends up, I mean, his fumble was just a really weird play. I think he was trying to reach forward to negate the loss somewhat, but like he put the ball out there and it got knocked out. It was a bit weird, but
by the way, can we
he's-
talk about Gino real quick?
Sure.
I mean, this arguably was the biggest game of his entire NFL career, given the pageantry of it all, going up against Tom Brady, just kind of the setting. He hasn't played in a lot of big games before, so as an NFL player. So I felt like maybe he was a little amped to start this game.
Might have been, yeah.
Maybe. I know the sentiment of the offense from, like, again, multiple players afterwards was that all of the issues in the first half were execution. Like, Tampa Bay did what they expected. They just got out executed. I didn't necessarily sense Gino being a bit amped, other than that weird play. But then, like, Brady has a weird pick, which he, like, I don't know, he thought Barton wouldn't play that. Like, it was the bad pick. But, Gino finishes at 33-23, 275 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and those 2 fourth down conversions were brilliant. It's just, in the first half, Seattle seemed to come in with like we're going to try run the ball, which we did predict. We did say that they try to control the clock a bit and keep, Brady off there, but they couldn't run the ball. And then they finally open it up and give it to sort of Gino, but that's too one-dimensional. You can't really do that. When you can't run the ball, it impacts you. It wasn't the way that Seattle wants to win. It wasn't the way that they've won the last 4 games.
Yeah, and anytime regardless of how much you do run the ball, if the gains are that minimal, you're just backing yourself up. You're not gonna be converting, or the chance of converting a new series is minimal. That said, though, when Pete said that they leaned on Gino, I mean, whatever their 4-minute plan was, like their 4-minute drive, what they had game plan for this game, it was clearly effective because they really were, even in that fumble drive, which was a horrific play, and they were still moving the ball in that drive, and then in the subsequent drives they were moving the ball, so they found their rhythm. I think part of not finding the rhythm earlier was that they just didn't have the drives. They didn't have the time of possession in the first half to really get going. So that hurt them. I think, though, that, like, 275 yards for about 8.3 yards per attempt or whatever it was, and I think his EPA per attempt was up there too. So I mean, it wasn't a bad game in the passing game. They just needed more chances, and it was too little, too late.
Mhm.
Well, it's just
But
like it's like they hadn't ever seen, and this isn't the first time I felt this, but that first half, other than like when the Bucks really thought a play was coming, like pistol full house, they went cover 4 because they knew Seattle was doing it to try and get one-on-ones outside.
mhm.
But most of the time, it was like it looked like cover 3 buzz. And it's not the first time that Seattle's offense has had issues like getting going against that. But then in the second half, they come out and they're suddenly like there's like that drive of like cover 3B to cover 3B to cover 3B. It's like, where's this been? Like,
Yeah.
where's the drop back passing game? And how many bootlegs were there today? Like 2? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
I guess
Yeah,
if you can't get the run game going, you it feels difficult.
I mean,
calling
I really
bootleg, but,
think
like, they
that
just
whatever.
struggled.
Sorry, my bad. I really do think that eventually Waldron just hit the big red button, which was, what's my 4-minute play call sheet look like? And
Mhm.
it was working, and it didn't stop working, so we kept calling it. But he clearly had a, you know, a you could even say a neutral state game plan in mind, and it wasn't working the way they thought they did. I think that they were trying to. I think that they were trying to scheme up explosives in the run game, particular looks, and it just wasn't popping, and they were a little shell shocked by that, like kind of deer in the headlights. So he scrapped it. Whatever they came out with, he scrapped completely and dove into we need points now offense.
Mhm.
And you could say, because you don't have the run game element, you don't have the play action element, that is a imbalanced approach. And Pete even said we needed to lean on Geno. And what do you do in 2-minute situations, 4-minute situations? You lean on the quarterback in a situation where the defense knows you're leaning on him, and they execute it in spite of it. And that's probably to your point. They play a lot of cover 3, spot trap cover 3. They'll play, of course, they have their 2 high stuff. But they just executed in spite of that. Like the throw up the seam to Goodwin, where he got rid of the ball, that will look really pretty on tape. Where he got rid of it relative to where the defenders were, relative to where Goodwin was, like, great play. And then he even managed to throw it back hip out, against the grain of the safety, while throwing it before the receiver was open. So, like, that's just a very anticipatory play. They had the DK isolation stuff. They had some success there. The throw to touch the throw to Goodwin's touchdown. The throw that was Goodwin's touchdown was amazing. I don't know how he or Goodwin did that.
I was right on the line of that football.
Really?
It was excellent.
Nice.
Yep. Very pretty throw.
So, I mean, there isn't a lot of negative things to say about the pass game in that sense, because, again, they moved the ball. They just didn't get enough chances.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There were a couple times, though, where it seemed like Geno could have run for a first down. He just passed it up for some reason.
Yeah.
Like that's really my only real critique of him.
Yeah, what was
the pass
that?
game.
There was that play where he had the edge against Shrienka, right? Number 9.
3rd and 2, whatever it was.
Yeah,
he's,
3rd
like,
and 2, and then he threw it
tries
into double coverage.
He's looking for Lockett in, like, the laid down flat, but, like, he just should have gone for it.
Yeah.
But he's just trying too hard to keep his eyes downfield, which, you'll get rewards from that too. I think this is a pretty good way of the explosives on my miscellaneous statistics report. The Bucks had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 explosives, and I'm sure there's 1 or 2 12-yard runs as well. Whereas Seattle had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 explosives, and there might be 1 12-yard run. But they got out explosive for the first time in a while, and they've lost. So again, that's that side of the game is not in their favor either. They just didn't turn up for the first half, and then they made 1 too many mistakes when they're trying to come back. Like, I think is that a good summary?
Yeah, and again, the first half goes just slightly a little bit different. They probably won this game, considering the way that the second half of this game went. They weren't able to get the ball back there at the end, and who knows how everything else plays out. But I felt
they were probably due a game like this as well, because I feel like they've been let off a few times, and they've had a few. It's football, right? There's
Yeah.
variance.
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. That's why, like, I don't know. The Twitter reaction to this game is a little much. Like, it's gonna happen. It's week 10. There's a lot of outside factors that went into this game as well, I think, and and you're going up against the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, you're gonna get got a little bit,
Yeah.
and this defense is pretty good, so it's just gonna happen.
I think though, so I don't think that there's any reason for concern, because the fixes, what you can do, what's in your control, seem so obvious, the same way that they seemed obvious after week 4, and then some of the changes they made in week 5, then even more changes they made hitting into week 6. And like you could fathom at that point in time multiple different types of changes. You could like put forth an argument for, you could do this, you could do that. But we all said that, well, they're going to do this because this feels obvious, because it just flows from what they already kind of have, what they've done last year, et cetera, right? So at this point, you could go a number of directions with trying to, get back on track. But I feel like what they would do to do that feels equally obvious, and that is, you have front checks that handles those runs. You just need to be more prepared, have them on hand to call them when you need. You've got some run blitzes or line slants that you can whip out whenever you need them. Just make sure you have them in the game plan. And then in the pass game, you just need to have like drill specific modes of matching against certain formations that they also have. They just weren't expecting. Essentially, they got caught in stuff they weren't expecting to get caught in. It's not like they haven't presented the same football answers before. And the football answers that those really aren't that difficult to roll out there.
No.
So that's why I feel like the fixes are pretty easy. Like when it comes down to one-on-one execution, like one guy versus one guy, I don't feel like they were dragging that far behind this game. In fact, for a large percentage of it, I'd live with the results there. Everything else was just circumstantial and team play. You just need to make the circumstances work for you by essentially being more prepared. And that's why this game plan was so good for the Bucs, because they did stuff they normally don't do. Like a tendency breaker game. They probably don't do this next week, right?
And so, Carol was asked about just noticing in Ty's great graphic, the 0 sacks figure. Carol was asked about that, and he said that their rush plan for Brady didn't really work in the way they wanted. I actually thought the Buccaneers offensive line in the run and pass game just went to work. I think they've sort of found something. They're heating up, but I think the rush plan was overload lined, but I didn't see too much of it. Doing
there were
stuff,
only a
but the
couple
big
times
thing,
where I felt like guys won their reps for Seattle. Shelby Harris had a good one. That's really it, though. That's all I can think of right now.
The big thing is this is a game where, unlike the last 4 games or whatever, but the games they've won, they didn't have a 2-score lead going into the fourth quarter. They were down by 2 scores, and that's why it's important to be up in the fourth quarter, because then you can go to work. Just like the Buccaneers pass rush was trying to go to work up in that element. How many sacks did the Bucs finish with? Probably not
3.
too many, actually.
3, I believe.
3, yeah, and some of those were early. But anyway, I guess the positive is they're 6-4. Like Griff said, they have the solutions. They just got the balance wrong today, and the offense did its thing of. Which again, like, I don't know how much of this is Waldron, like, because I don't know how they have like halves where they just do not do it. Like, that's not, we've seen that with Gino and Russ. Like, it's not a quarterback specific thing. And yeah, the NFL is difficult, and the Buccaneers defense does have a lot of talented players, but to just completely just collapse in these ways when you've been so hot is unusual.
Yeah. The only thing we know is that when they're presented with what they've been doing reveals some significant weakness, we tend to see a pretty focused response. So I'm curious to see what the Right. Yeah, and they have another week to think about it too.
Mhm.
So just specifically how they do make those tweaks will really provide commentary on what they think the weak spots are as well.
And yeah, who have they got next? The Raiders.
Raiders, and that
Who
is definitely
what's
a
their
good
score at
team
the
to.
moment?
They are losing 13-7 to Jeff Saturday and the Colts.
That's funny.
Saturday.
So that is a very good team to potentially U-turn against.
There we go.
There we go. You got it
Mhm.
in. Well done.
Yep,
Be proud
got
of
it in.
yourself.
49ers
Yep.
play tonight. Ooh, okay.
Anything
Against,
that, by the way, no matter what else happens today, the Seahawks stay in first place. So
Right.
there you go. Good copium. Just win the division. Don't bottle it. Don't panic.
don't
Don't
bottle it.
panic. Don't
Just
panic.
stay calm, everyone. It's just a minor blip on the road to the Super Bowl. No.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What did you think? Finally, another special teams thing. Pete Carroll decided to not take Jason Myers onto the field for a 57-yard field goal. They took it to their game. They punted. I think it went back into the end zone. No, it was down at the 12 by Ballor. It came off his knee.
Yeah.
And then Myers was good from 55 after DK's unsportsmanlike conduct penalty when he thought he should have had defensive pass interference thrown on the back shoulder fade, which fell incomplete. By the way, that was not defensive pass interference. DK just got boxed out. And yeah, so Myers was good from 55. Again, I'd have asked Carroll this, but I missed the press conference. Do you have a strong opinion? I feel people are grumpy about this because they had to get up at 6:30 a.m. to watch the game. There was very grumpy comments all throughout.
Were you
Yeah.
grumpy today, Griff? Waking up at 6?
I would know because I'm an early bird. So I'm up at like
really? You're an early bird.
I would have woken up at around 7:15 anyway. So I was like, what's 45 extra minutes?
You catch the worm?
Catch the worm.
Mhm.
Gotta get some things going, take care of some things.
Checked out the
Mhm.
volcano.
Checked out the volcano. It's still eruptionless. I'm winning that
Pathetic.
staring contest.
Yeah.
Um
Scared to compete.
but to answer your question, I think that Pete Carroll didn't want to shatter Myers' confidence by potentially missing a big kick in front of all of the Europeans. Because you guys kick a lot of balls over there.
That's true.
Always kicking balls.
You don't
yeah.
throw them as often as we do. We like to throw them. You guys like to kick them. And I don't think he wanted to make him feel embarrassed. You guys do your ball throwing. Don't get me. You'll throw some balls.
Well, no, on the subject of throwing balls, I think Brady's children were on the field in like the pre-game, and oh my god, like this kid looks about 6 and he's like making incredible catches, and the other kid is a bit older and he is slinging it and he walks just like Tom. So they're coming.
We've got a Manning coming down the pipe.
Yeah, we
right
got
now,
Arch. Right? We got Arch Manning coming in a couple years.
What's Breeze's kid doing? We need Breeze and we need Philip. One of Philip Rivers is off spawns. We just need the same quarterback names for like the next 10 centuries.
Well, all right, just statistically,
10 centuries, decades. I did that last time.
Statistically, one of Phil's kids have to be good at football. Like there's just You're rolling. It's a roll of the dice, and they've rolled it too many times.
We get into eugenics here.
No, but I'm saying that statistically, when you've got 14 of them going on 24, one of them's got to be good at throwing the rock, right?
How many of them are there? Like 43?
I think he actually has like 8 or something.
I was close.
No,
the seed is strong. We'll put it that way.
It's always important. Right. Well, with that, we will be back on Wednesday with our Matty and Ty Matty and Ty newsy kind of segment.
You guys wouldn't want that. You guys wouldn't want a Matty and Ty tape review. Trust me.
No, it would go off the rails. And then on the next day, Griff and I and maybe Ty will break down the film of this game. Hopefully find some copium in there. I'm sure there will be some. Although actually maybe not, having been at the game. Anyway, and then on Sunday, we won't be here or we might. We'll figure out the bye week, but we're only going to do 2 podcasts that week because it's the bye week and we don't need to do them because the Seahawks aren't playing and I'm going on vacation actually. So there you go.
Good for you, Matthew. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Peace.